Thanks for watching. Today, this video in a series of how to ride your scooter, this video is about how to avoid having a crash, basically running into something. Now, when I say something, could be anything. It could be a pothole, could be another car, could be a cat, could be a crack in the road. Now, this kind of a scenario actually does happen. I'm here in Thailand, and just last week I was riding down the highway at about 80 kilometers per hour, and I saw a 6-foot ladder on the road. That was very unexpected. So this is about seeing something unexpected and having to adjust so you don't run into it. Crash avoidance. Thanks for watching. This was actually one of the natural progressions in the series of videos that I've been making, but it's actually coincides with a response from some of the viewers. Puja Son Ija 7011 said, "Hello sir, thank you so much for the tips and tricks on how to ride a scooty. However, I have one question with respect to slow riding. In India, we have all sorts of roads ranging from the good, flat roads to the bumpy and perilous ones. On some parts, I would keep the throttle to a minimum, where in some, the road is so rutty that I and my scooter become wobbly. I would literally fly off the seat. Any suggestions on how to maintain the speed on the perilous roads?" Also, another viewer wrote, "My question is, what can I do when there are potholes in front of you and you can't look that far ahead toward the horizon?" So this question was about the vision as well. So I'm going to try and cover some of these points in today's tutorial. So basically, if you see something, if you're riding your scooter down the road and you see some kind of a hazard, something unexpected, there's pretty much 3 responses. Number 1, you stop until that hazard gets out of the way. Second option is to swerve. The third option, and one we don't want, is actually hit it. So I'm going to cover those 3 things, three approaches or 3 options in this video. So step 1 is stop. So if you see a hazard, you're cruising down the road, you see the hazard, you've got to stop. Imagine it's a dog, whatever it might be, or a pothole, or like I used in the example, a ladder. So just go back to this is kind of a continuation from one of the earlier videos, which was about the emergency stopping and getting familiar with the brakes. So we're actually really honing in where it's like the second part of getting familiar with the brakes. So I've got a couple of little exercises here that will just help you get used to stopping in an emergency. So this is part 1. The first option is stopping. So here I am in a nice big vacant car park. This is the best place to practice when you're trying to hone your skills, increase your skills, and build that muscle memory. So find yourself a nice big space. Now for this exercise, it's the same, it's similar to what we've done already in one of the series, and we're just trying to stop at a specific place. So I got a pair of dirty old thongs, as we'd call them in Australia, or the rest of the world probably calls them flip-flops or sandals. So I'm going to put these down. These are going to be my kind of hazard on the road. So here we are, here's the hazard. Imagine it's whatever it might be. Now I've deliberately picked something small like this because if I don't stop in time, I'm not going to hit anything that's going to cause any damage. It's not going to throw me off the bike or anything. I can actually pretty much safely run over these and barely even notice it. So find something kind of small-ish. The kind of like sports markers are usually really good, but if you don't have them, a couple of shoes are going to be fine. Now the other thing is, when you're kind of setting this exercise up, just clear any rubbish that might be on the road, because you don't want any kind of sticks and stuff like that, or oil, because when you jam on those brakes, you want good traction. You want your tires to be making good connection with the road surface, and your brake pads to be connecting well as well. So this is the kind of exercise we're going to do first of all. So I'm going to be coming down here at a fair bit of speed, and at the right time I'm going to jam on those brakes fairly fast, fairly hard, fairly firm, because I am stopping in an emergency. Now if you're a beginner, and that's what these videos are all about, beginners, be sure to just build up. Start easy, take it gently, and then as your confidence increases and as your skills increase, you can get the speed up a bit higher and try to stop a little bit shorter as well. So I'm going to set this exercise up and give you a demonstration, and then you can practice this on your own. So the technique we use is basically set up and squeeze. So when you're in an emergency, you don't just grab your brakes, because if they grab too tightly, you're going to lose control of your bike and you're going to come off. So the idea is that, first of all, we do the setup stage. The technique we use is called the setup and squeeze. So first of all, you can notice with your brake, the brake lever, that there's a bit of play. So this bit area here actually does nothing. So stage one is with all your fingers, grab that and just squeeze it, or set it up as the first stage until it actually makes some contact. So you're trying to just be sensitive until you feel it's making contact, and there it is there, I can just feel it. So that's a fair way in. So that's a fair way in before it starts to make contact. So this part here is quite sensitive. So this sensitive part is the setup, and then the second part is the squeeze. And now depending on your bike, depends on how kind of quickly you could squeeze it or softly. So this is about you not only getting familiar with your bike, but also increasing your skills. So by doing this out in the car park, you're getting familiar with your braking system of your own motor scooter. So for the best braking system and to bring your bike to a kind of a quick halt, you need to be using both brakes. So you're using the front and the rear brake as well. Now the concern is, I taught a lot of beginners, the concern is that people grabbing that front brake too quickly. So something not to do. Don't jam on that front brake, because if you jam on that front brake, that front wheel can lock, and that's when you lose control, and that's when you'll come off the bike. So be a little bit careful with the front brake. So as I say, do this exercise because you're getting familiar with the braking system. Now, I'm just going to revisit something that I did on an earlier tutorial. If you are an absolute beginner, get used to the rear brake first, get used to the front brake second, and then get used to using them both. So this exercise today is, we've already done that. We've already established that you can use your front brake and your rear brake and use them both. Now we're trying to use both of them and bring that bike to a stop quite swiftly. So here's the exercise. I'm going to be cruising down. I'm going to start at maybe about 20 kilometers an hour, and I'm going to stop where my shoes are. Then I'm going to try again at 30. Then I'm going to try again at 40. Then I'm going to try again at 50. And I'm just going to try and build that speed and just get comfortable with stopping quickly, stopping abruptly, but not losing any control of my motor scooter. Now just keep in mind a couple of things to look at. Be sure that when you're trying to stop quickly, throttle off, brake. I've seen a few beginners where they keep the throttle on while they're braking, and as you can imagine, that's not really effective. When you hit those brakes fairly abruptly and you're coming to a stop quite quickly, when you've got that front brake on it, because that actually is really effective. When you're trying to stop in a hurry, the front brake is really effective. That's the one you want to kind of master in this exercise. Now, because you're on that front brake and rear brake, your body will actually be shifting forward because of momentum. So that means the front of the bike will actually dip as well. So if you're doing it correctly, you will feel that front of the bike dipping a little bit and pushing down those front, the suspension on the front wheel. Anyway, enough talking, let's get into it. Okay, a couple of things. So a couple of things with that exercise. Let me just take your helmet off. So a couple of things about that exercise. First of all, if you do happen to lock up the wheel, which I did, that's actually fine. And that's actually part of your skill development. Now the concept is if you do feel that one of the wheels is locking up, ease off the brake a little bit and then reapply. So don't panic. I mean, it's easier to say than do, but don't panic. It's actually part of the process. So if you do feel it lock up a little bit, just release a little bit and regain that control. The second thing I wanted to point out as well is that the idea is that you're not putting your feet out too early. that you're actually bringing your bike to a complete stop and then drop to the left leg, which we've already talked about in an earlier video about why we drop to our left leg, and it's to do with bikes with gears and braking systems where you have to use your right foot. So bring it up to a stop, and then your left foot goes down once you've actually brought it to a stop. Now what I did with that exercise, the first one I did was about 20 kilometers an hour, then 30, and then the last one I did was at 40. Now if you're a beginner as well, make sure you give yourself a little bit of a run up and make sure you're going straight as well, because you don't want to be thinking about turning and things like this. You want to be 100% focused on your braking system of your bike, but also the sensitivity in your hands as well. So you really want to be concentrating on the braking and coming to a certain point. Okay, once you've got that one down and you're feeling comfortable, the next one is trying to do it with stopping, not with actually prescribed position, because that doesn't really happen in the real world. When emergencies happen, they are emergencies and they're completely out of the blue. So the concept is, when you're riding along, all of a sudden it's, I've got to stop. I've spotted a problem, I've got to stop immediately. And you're not actually calculating, oh, I'll put the brake on here and I'm going to come up to that line. Now this works well if you're going, when I was a motorcycle trainer, this worked well when I would be the trainer and I'd say stop, or clap my hands, or drop my hands, so the rider, the beginner, would see now is the time that I have to stop. But if you're on your own, don't worry, just in your mind, it's like, you know, whether you're riding along and counting to 10, this time I'm going to stop at number 6, or whatever it might be. Try and surprise yourself a little bit. It may feel a bit weird, but it's the idea of stopping, doing that unexpected quick stop. So I'm just going to demonstrate that a little bit now. Actually, I don't think I will demonstrate that. I'm not sure where I'm going to put the camera. I'm not going to hold it either. But I think you get the concept. So that's the exercise number 2 when it comes to the emergency stopping. So you've seen the hazard, you stop. Anyway, let's move on to the second one, and this option is called the swerve. So just imagine you've seen the pothole, or in my example earlier, there was a ladder, a 6-foot ladder on the road, on the highway. Someone's behind me, they're too close. If I jam on the brakes, whoever's behind me is going to hit me, so that's not an option. I have to swerve, I have to go around the hazard, because I'm going at a fairly high speed. I'm on the highway, I'm going 80, so I need to swerve and keep going. So that's what this next exercise is all about. Earlier I did a video about counter steering. You need to know how to do counter steering before you can do this exercise. So don't go doing this exercise until you understand the principles of counter steering. Because the concept is, you're driving along, you see the hazard, the pothole, the ladder, the cat, or a road accident, and you can't stop because someone's too close behind you. Your best option is to swerve out of the road. So that means you've got the counter steer. So you do the push. So first of all, you need to make that decision. Am I going to the left or am I going to the right? Which is the safest? So if I am going to the right, I do that little bit of a push on the handlebar to drop the bike to my right, but then I'm not just going to keep going to the right and head off to the hills and run into something else. I then need to bring it back to that left, or back to the straight. So the concept is, you're driving along, you see the hazard, you counter steer, so I'm just nudging or just gently putting pressure on the handlebars to the right to drop the bike to the right. I'm pushing the right side of the handlebars, so the bike drops to the right, and then I need to get that back onto the left side a bit, so I go straight again. So this is the counter steer exercise. So I'm going to do the same kind of thing, and I'm going to use the same markers, but this time you're going to see me swerve around them. So I think you get the concept there of, hopefully the camera picked it up, you could actually see me swerve and then regain control again. Now, same as the last exercise, be sure to practice that at 20 kilometers an hour. When you're feeling comfortable, build it up to 30, then build it up to 40. One other thing that's going to be actually really important in all of this is you want to have your skills. So these exercises right now, hang on, I'll take off my helmet. So this is primarily about developing your skills. Now the other thing that's a really crucial part of this, a crash avoidance, is decision making. But first of all, before you make your decision, is spotting what hazard is up ahead. So scanning, so vision, so being aware of what's up ahead. So when you see that problem, whatever it might be, in a very short space of time, you need to work out what is the best option. Can I stop? Check who's behind me. Is it safe to stop? What's the road surface like? But so these things should be all skimming in the back of your mind as you're actually riding anyway. So some of the important principles, keeping a good safety distance. So when you're following someone, you've got a fair bit of buffer between you and that car in front. So if there is a hazard, you've got a couple of seconds to work out, what am I gonna do? Am I gonna stop, or am I gonna swerve, gonna do the counter steer and go around it? Now this is really easy to do when you've got a calm mind and when you're not under stress. But as you know, when you're under a bit of pressure, it's so easy to panic, and that's when you make some mistakes and grab your brake or hit things, or or things like target fixation come into play as well. So these exercises here are about developing your skills. But even if you've got the world's greatest skills, vision and decision making are super, super important, and being able to keep making clear decisions when your stress levels are down a little bit. Now in a future video, I'll talk a little bit more about that, about the importance of vision and the following distance and the safety margins. So we'll dig a bit deeper. So today is just about developing these skills. So we've done the emergency stop or controlled stop. We've done a swerve. Now the third option, and this is the one we don't want, and that is actually hitting. Now, first of all, I'm going to start with something simple like cracks in the roads or potholes. If you see them, or a speed bump. Now here I'm in Thailand here, so many speed bumps around and they're not really marked quite clearly, especially if I'm riding at night. They really surprise me. So the concept is, if you're about to hit something, whether it's a crack in the road or a pothole or a speed bump, it's best to do it when your wheels are perpendicular. So you're actually hitting that crack kind of straight on. Because if you're on a bit of an angle, it can wobble your bike a bit. And if you're a beginner, that's very disconcerting. So you want to be able, no matter what you see, whatever issue is approaching, if you're hitting it a bit more like square at 90 degrees, your tires will go boom, boom, and you're not going to go wobble, wobble. You're going to just go maybe up and down. So you've got a lot more control on your bike, and you'll feel a lot more comfortable if you're just bumping up and down over compared to like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So that's tip number one. Try and hit things at kind of like a 90 degree, if you can spot them. Particularly a crack in the road, because if you're on a bit of if there is a bit of a groove on the road and your bike hits it at a bit of an angle, your tires will start to wobble a little bit. And that also, if you're a beginner, that's actually, yeah, that's when you panic a little bit. So try and hit things a bit square, straight on. Now that's for like rubbish on the road and things like that. Now when it comes to something bigger, that's not the principle you want, because you don't want to be T-boning. That's the worst. Now just keep this in mind. If you've got a country with roundabouts, one of the main principles of roundabouts is to avoid that T-bone. So you don't have, the fatalities at roundabouts are greatly reduced, because what happens, if somebody is involved in an accident, they're actually involved, they're hitting at a glance. So they're bumping, just imagine a car and a car are bumping at a glance, so less damage is done, compared to a intersection where a T-bone accident happens, and they're more, the fatalities are higher. So if you're setting something larger, the idea is to, so I had to abruptly stop my recording before because my camera overheated. Anyway, good chance for me to stop for a cup of coffee. So I've had my cup of coffee, my camera's cooled down, so let's the tutorial begin. Now I'm going to do another video about parking. Now here's an example of a lazy, inconsiderate person parking. There's actually motorcycle parking here. This bugger has said, bugger that, I'm going to park at the front door because I'm important. I don't know what was going on in his mind. Anyway, before I leave the car park, entering and exiting driveways for a beginner can actually be a little bit perilous. So this is where I'm talking about trying to come in at like 90 degrees. So this driveway here, it's not a big crack or anything, but if you're coming in on a bit of an angle, that's when your bike wobbles a little bit, and for a beginner, that's really disconcerting. So the concept is that you actually come a bit wide, and then do a sharper turn and then enter at 90 degrees. Because as I mentioned before, if you're going over a bump and you're heading it straight on, your body's just going to go up and down, which you can handle. But if you go sideways, that's when beginners kind of lose it a bit and actually start to panic a little bit. So we covered the 3 different options. When you see the hazard, option number 1 was stop. Option number 2 was swerve. Option number 3, and it's the one we don't want, is hit it. So I'm just going to go over a couple of things like entering driveway, some things you can't avoid, like the driveway or a pothole or a speed bump. So the concept is try and hit them at 90 degrees and slow down. The viewer that asked me a question about, how do I maintain my speed and go over potholes? The answer is you don't. Slow down. Slow down to take the hazard. The slower you go and the straighter you go, the more easier it is to get over it. Once you've gone over the problem, whatever it might be, then you can accelerate it and zip off again. In fact, that's one of the best parts of motorcycling, is that acceleration part. So enjoy that part. So slow down, slow down. So back to that initial idea too, what I mentioned earlier about spotting things early enough so that you can slow down. Now that's actually the 4th option as well, which I haven't mentioned. If you can spot problems early enough, you can slow down, let the problem go, whether it's a motorcycle, a car, a kid, whatever it might be. Once the problem is gone, then you just speed up and continue. But to do this, you need a fair bit of safety distance between you and the vehicle in front, so you've got good vision. You also don't want anyone on your tail. So that's why it's important to be using these mirrors at all times, so you're constantly aware of who's behind you. So when it comes time for an emergency, you already know what's behind you. You don't have to think, now should I stop or shouldn't I stop? You already know that no one's behind me, so I can do whatever I want. I can slow down, I can stop, I can swerve. You also need to know who's beside you at all times, which is another important point when you're driving amongst traffic. And I'm going to do this in a future video, is about road positioning. It's really important to get that right road position, so you always have that exit out. So whatever happens ahead, you've got the option to go right, you've got the option to go left, or you've got the option to slow down or to stop. So, and you can a lot of times control that. So by choosing the right road position, you're going to have a lot more a less stressful ride, particularly when emergencies occur. Now, I mentioned the scenario earlier where a ladder was on the road and I had to swerve to get around it. There was another scenario, and on the same highway, I was doing about 80, it was a massive lizard crossing the road. Now, I was going fast enough and I was too close to the guy in front, and the guy in front, the car in front, it went, and then the lizard came behind it. So I was the first one to see that lizard. Now I could see that the guy behind me was a bit close, so stopping wasn't an option. I slowed a little bit, but in the end I had to hit the poor lizard. And then this is where this decision making comes into play as well. The area that I actually hit that lizard, well, I did hit the poor lizard at 90 degrees over its tail. And because when I was looking at it, it's like, oh shit, what am I going to do here? The lizard, I'm going to move, I'm going to slow it and go over the tail. So I ended up hitting the animal, which is actually, if you've been in the driving industry, when it comes to dogs and cats and lizards, you're better off, I hate to say it, but you're better off hitting them than swerving and causing an accident and causing yourself harm. You've got to look after yourself. So that's another scenario of a real life situation where I had to hit an animal. I had to actually hit it. Now, one more thing I want to talk about before I jump on the bike, and I'm going to go for a bit of a cruise, and I'm going to try and hopefully find a few scenarios where I've got the emergency and I have to slow, I have to stop, or I swerve. And then I'll put that together at the end of this video. The other thing is if you actually do come off and fall off your bike. Now, when it comes to falling off your bike, important to have your safety gear on. So the first thing, the first two things that are probably, the first body parts that are probably gonna make contact with the road or whatever it might be, another vehicle, either your hands or your feet. So whenever I ride a motorcycle, always got shoes on. Always got shoes on. I've seen I remember in Vietnam once, I saw one guy's foot completely mangled. and I saw blood just gushing out. After I saw that, I vowed always to wear a pair of shoes when I ride, because if you fall off or you come out, if your bike starts to wobble, natural instincts, particularly with a beginner, is put your foot out. Put your foot out. So please be sure to wear shoes. The other thing is your hands too. That's your natural reaction. If you're falling, you put your hands out. So I always wear gloves. I'm here in Thailand at the moment. Not many other people wear gloves. Interesting enough, the motorcycle taxi guys who are always on bikes, they always wear gloves as well, and a helmet of course. Now, the most valuable parts of your body, your head and this area here where your heart is. So if you're coming off a bike, it actually is kind of better to run into an object with your hand or with your foot rather than your head. Now, if you look at MotoGP, if somebody does come off the bike, they've actually got the skidding on their body down pat. So if you watch them, they're often on their back and they put legs front. They haven't got their arms out or anything, just they've got their legs out in front, because if they're sliding and they hit the wall, their legs are going to hit first and sure. But they know it's better to break your foot than it is to smash your head. So feet first. If you've got that control and you're sliding and skidding, feet first is what you want to do on your back, just like the MotoGP guys when they come off a bike. The other thing is momentum. You've got a bit of weight on your bike, so the idea is that you let go of your bike. One of the mistakes that people make is hold on to their bike, but if it's your weight and the bike's weight, you're actually going to have a lot more momentum, and you're going to skid faster and further. So if you come off your bike, let go of that bike. You don't want the extra weight. Get your feet out, so whatever you're going to hit, you hit feet first. Anyway, I hope that never ever happens to you. But if it does, you've already got a plan in your mind. That's what's important thing about these little exercises that I'm doing, that we're practicing our different skills, developing our skills. We've also got a plan in our mind. So we're preparing our mind, preparing our bodies and our muscle memories in case there is some kind of a problem. We're ready for it. We've already got a plan. Anyway, I'm going to strap this camera onto my chest. I'm going to ride, and hopefully I'll see a few hazards and I can demonstrate what we've just learnt in this video. Okay, time to go. When I'm exiting this driveway, I am going 90 degrees. Keeping a nice distance so I can just slow. Always checking my mirrors to see who's behind me, so I know whether I do have the option of stopping abruptly or not. So you can see the guy behind me is getting a bit close, so I'm keeping my distance here and with the guy in front. That's easy obstacle to avoid. Here's an unexpected. No, he's going. So the slow is the best option. So here's the speed bump. I'm going to get 90 degrees. I'm going to slow down and I just roll over it. Notice I'm not braking and I'm not accelerating. As I roll over the speed bump. So that's the concept, is rolling over. But if you're in a bit of a hurry and all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I didn't see that. Slow down as much as you can. Let it roll over. And if it's too bumpy, stand up. Stand up. It doesn't matter too much with the front wheel. But when that back wheel hits the bump, if your bum is out of the seat, it's going to be a pretty smooth ride. So that's my pro tip. When you're riding along and you see that speed bump, oh, here's the speed bump, I'm going to slow down, can't slow down enough, off and roll, and I'm out of the seat. And I sit back down, and then I accelerate again. Okay, so I see a hazard up ahead. I've got birds, I've got cars. I'm going to slow down a little bit and let the hazard get out of the way. I knew no one's behind me, so I knew slowing down and stopping is an option. But ultimately, that's the best option out of all of them. If you see a hazard, keep your distance, slow down, let the hazard go, and then you just smooth and move on. Okay, so this guy, I'm going to get out of his way and then get back into on my side of the road. Oh, there's a hazard. I'm going to slow and let the hazard go. That's the best option. Always the best option. If you spot things early enough, slow down, let the hazard get out of your way, and then you continue. It's the least stressful way of riding. Okay, you can see this hazard here. I'm slowing down. I got the speed bump and I got that. And I got, what am I going to do? Slowing down. So I haven't actually stopped yet. I haven't swerved. I've stopped. Now I see what he's done. Now I can move off. Again, I'm continually checking my mirrors. No one's behind me. So I know I can stop and slow down really easily. Here again, hit the 90 degrees, slow down and let it roll over. And if I'm going too fast, I get out of my seat. I stand up. Okay, another hazard up ahead. I slow down. I wait for that hazard to get out of my way, and I perfected the art of the slow ride. There we go, hazard's out of the way. So safety margin is if you've got a nice big safety margin, it's the least stressful way to ride. And when you're riding with low stress, you can make decisions. It's easier for making decisions when you're not stressed. When you hit that panic button and you got to think, what do I do? They're valuable seconds that you've lost, and that's when you can run into something. U-turn here. Wait for this car to. Maybe a. The road's a bit rough here, so I'm just going to take it easy and roll over. Hazard, swerve, avoid the danger. Okay, I'm going to try and get a bit more safety margin now. I'm back into the flow. Notice my road positioning too. I am sitting right behind the driver, so when he looks in his mirror, he sees me, and the guy behind me, I'm right in the middle of their field of vision as well. So notice here, I've got no one beside me on the left. Well, here comes the guy. I'm going to wait for him. Now I've got no one beside me on the left as well. So if I need to, I can swerve to the left. So I've got an exit. I've got an option out. I've also got no one behind me. So these are the things that should be constantly on your mind. It's like, can I swerve? Can I stop? Can I swerve? Can I stop? Can I swerve? Can I? So you're prepared. So when the emergency does happen, you're ready.